Hello, film fans. Welcome to All the Film Things. I'm your host, Elizabeth. Thank you for listening. If you're enjoying this podcast, please leave a review and a rating. Also follow All the Film Things on Instagram for updates and more film things. Today, I'm talking with Jonathan Berman. Jonathan Berman is a producer and director who has been working in the industry for nearly 40 years. Before making his own films, often focused on subcultures not often discussed in mainstream media, such as Commune and the Shvitz, he worked as a producer, co-writer, and assistant sound editor on films and television shows, with one of his first jobs being a production assistant on the set of Pee-wee's Playhouse. My Friend Paul, Jonathan's sophomore documentary, for which he directed, wrote, and produced, was nominated for the Grand Jury Prize at the Slamdance Film Festival in 1999. His most recent film, calling All Earthlings, won the debut feature competition jury prize at the Illuminate Film Festival in 2018. Aside from his work in film production, he is a professor at Cal State San Marcos School of Arts and has taught courses on subjects like documentary filmmaking, media distribution, and U.S. and international cinema. Jonathan's documentary, Commune, is celebrating its 20th anniversary by being screened in its newly restored form across the U.S. Several more screenings have been announced, with the next being in California, across Long Beach. We will be talking more about Commune and the upcoming screenings later in our interview, but follow @Commune the Movie on Instagram and Facebook to stay updated on the film and its upcoming screenings. Jonathan, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I'm very happy to have you on, and especially after watching Commune, I'm very excited for our conversation today and to talk about that a little later. I have plenty of questions, so as always, we unfortunately won't be able to get through all of them or be able to devote as much time to certain projects, but I will try my best to make this a well-rounded interview. A question I often like to start with is, how did you fall in love with cinema, and why the documentary format is especially of interest to you?
You know, I grew up watching TV, like a lot of people, and so I kind of felt like I have been so inundated with images and concepts and everything that I wanted to kind of make it bi-directional.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was the start of it. And then at age 13, my friends and I started shooting Super 8 films. Our friend's dad had this gorgeous Cinema Blue Super 8 camera. And so we were making karate films and anti-drug films and all kinds of stuff. Mafia movies, like little 4-minute films.
Yeah.
And actually, those are in My Friend Paul, some of those, which I know is a little hard to find right now.
I was trying to find that one. That was, I think, the main film of yours that I was missing, but I would love to watch it.
I'm happy to send it to you.
Yay, thank you. In an interview, you said you don't believe in objective documentaries. I was wondering if you could explain why documentaries cannot entirely be objective.
Yeah, well, that's a great starting question. I think that no storytelling is objective. I mean, even if this is like something I might tell my students, but even if you put a camera in the corner of a room and just shoot the events as they happen, there's an editorial decision right there. You got a little camera, you got a wide shot in the, you're looking at it through like almost a surveillance cam thing. So already it's got a slant to it. So, the thing that I like to say is be fair, but neutrality is impossible.
Yeah. I like how your films, specifically calling All Earthlings and Commune, they present other ideas and viewpoints, but you do focus in with open arms onto a subject. So I think you described yourself as a seeker and a non-believer at the same time. So it does show in your work. Are the films you watch in your free time aligned with the films you make? Like, do you tend to watch documentaries over feature films?
Well, I would say firstly that I watch a lot of non-documentary films. I will definitely tend towards comedy, and it's a very hard genre. I'm kind of a comedy nerd.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm living in Los Angeles, where I live part-time and lived for a while teaching at Cal State. It's just like comedy heaven. But as far as, like a Mel Brooks or the Marx Brothers and stuff like that, but also film noir. screwball comedy. Good drama. But on the documentary side, yeah, there's so many great documentaries now. Recently, the Pee Wee, where I started, as you mentioned, on Pee Wee's Playhouse. I think you mentioned that. As a production assistant, along with Rob Zombie and a bunch of other really fascinating people, amazing crew of animators. But that documentary was really good on the more recent side of things.
What comes to mind is your favorite comedy, or is there a person like Robin Williams or Jim Carrey? I hear that a lot. Do you have a specific person aside from Mel Brooks that come to mind as some of your favorites?
Can it be a team?
Of course it can be a team.
Okay. The Marx Brothers, I would say.
Ah, okay.
And particularly Duck Soup, which, I taught a course on counterculture in the media, counterculture in film, actually. And that film, Duck Soup, is insane. It's totally anarchy. These three lunatics are thrown in the middle of a coming war between two countries. If you haven't seen it, have you seen it, Elizabeth?
I've heard of it, but I haven't seen it.
Oh my God.
I gotta watch it.
This.
Okay.
Yes. And it's really short too. I also think that film should be 90 minutes or less unless you're Francis Ford Coppola.
Really?
For somebody like that, you get an exception. I have to do it in my attention span. But
what
also
about
something related to the REM cycle, we dream in 90-minute segments, I believe, in REM.
What about films like Christopher Nolan's work, like Oppenheimer? I was actually kind of reminded of him calling All Earthlings in terms of the creation of a town through one man. But what do you think of long films like those?
Well, one of the great things about being a Slamdance alumni, the festival, which came up against Sundance, is I got to be in the fold with people like Christopher Nolan, who I met when he had his first film there, The Following.
Oh my gosh.
I was just going through my address book, and I was like, oh, here's Christopher Nolan's cell phone. I should call him. I'm sure it's changed since then. That was a long time ago. But anyway, Christopher Nolan's great. Yeah, no, there's so many great films and, episodic shows as well. But I try not to get too drawn into TV series because it just takes up too much time. It has to be really special. The Sopranos was brilliant.
It's a commitment.
On the documentary front, obviously the Maisels brothers, salesmen and all that stuff. And there's a million great documentarians. After Commune, which was really the first film about cults and communes in modern era, a cult comes along. For those of you who haven't seen the film, you'll see it when you come to the Bay Area or Los Angeles or up in New York or any of the other places. And the cult comes along and challenges them. So that was the first film about it. But after that came out that film, Wild Wild Country. I thought that was really great. It was a series, actually, Netflix series. But yeah, there's a million wonderful documentaries out there.
I'm still stuck on you met Christopher Nolan at the very beginning of his career.
That's right.
Incredible.
Yep.
You talked with him, you got to see his film, probably one of the first people to see Following, I imagine.
Well, one of the secrets of film festivals is try not to see too many films because you're out snoozing. But, you do want to support your fellow filmmakers. I didn't see The Following. I still haven't seen The Following, but I've seen almost everything after that, ironically, so I should see it. But I did meet him, according to my address book. I don't really...
Oh, that's so cool. He's my favorite director since I was 10 years old, so that's very, very cool. As you mentioned in an interview, you said you were always interested in counterculture. So did the new Hollywood era have an impact on you wanting to be a filmmaker, or maybe became a particular interest to you later in life?
Like the new Hollywood, like Raging Bulls, that kind of thing?
Yeah, like the era that was catapulted by Easy Rider, which I do have some questions relating to that later.
Oh, big time. When I grew up in Long Island, there was a movie theater called the Mini Cinema, and they would show just the freak films, and repertoire or calendar or art house, whatever you want to call it. So you'd have Antonioni and you'd have, maybe King of Marvin Gardens, but you'd also have Jimi Hendrix Plays Berkeley and the Marx Brothers. So some of those calendar houses are still going. And in fact, that's the kind of place that are showing Commune now in those ranks, which is awesome. Yeah.
That's very cool.
So yeah, I totally was influenced by that era and kind of, I love Jaws, of course, but I bowed out from the corporate or blockbuster world that followed, not for ideological reasons exactly, just because it's just, Star Wars and all that's not really my thing.
Mm-hmm. Which filmmaker would you say has been your biggest teacher?
Ooh. I don't have a great answer to that. I mean, obviously for independence, John Cassavetes is great, but I don't really
yes.
follow his style. Which filmmaker? I don't know. Let me keep thinking about that.
Okay.
It's just an amalgamation of all of them, you know. But I don't have one role model exactly.
Okay. And as I mentioned in your introduction, you are a professor at Cal State San Marcos School of Arts, and one of the classes you taught was on international films. As someone who often watches international films from decades ago, I'm curious what comes to mind as some of your favorite international films that you've introduced to your students over the years.
Oh God, I mean, talk about we were starting to talk about sci-fi, but really Star Wars isn't exactly sci-fi. Believe it or not, it's more like melodrama set in space, dressed up with space. But I would say on the films that really struck me and that I share with my students, let's start with La Jetée. Which again, my professorial side is rearing with these questions. So La Jetée is Chris Marker, and it is incredible if you haven't seen it. There's some actually really nice versions out there on YouTube. You have to look carefully. But it means the jetty, and it's a sci-fi film comprised almost entirely of stills and narration. You have to watch it with the French narration and the subtitles. And it's like 26 minutes or something. That's incredible. Also, Fritz Lang, M.
Great film.
Yeah, it's amazing. And, I like to start my semester at Cal State with that because all of a sudden every preconception is blown. Our students are like riveted, and it's got that kind of like, what would you call it? Creep factor, that a lot of modern horror films have. And so it's in another language, and a lot of times students I think it might have changed now, but I have a hard, I don't watch, it used to be, I don't watch films with subtitles,
Yeah.
But I think that has changed. But it's subtitled, it's in black and white, right? But, you're riveted. So Fritz Lang, I love Fritz Lang, and started showing Z by, that's a great film. That's like kind of a political conspiracy. There's a whole subgenre that I really like from the 70s. But yeah, those 70s films are amazing. I mean, I love not all of them. A lot of them are terrible. The Monkey's Head. We include, I wouldn't include that in international, but we include that in counterculture for sure. But we include independent American films in world cinema. As far as French films, Jean-Luc Godard's amazing film Période de Feu, which is incredible, beautiful. Just the imagery is incredible, and then it's like an art lesson and a philosophy lesson. Some of his other films are horrible, in my opinion, but
that's what I've heard.
For me.
Yeah, apparently
but
after
this
Weekend.
Yeah, Weekend was great too.
Oh, you liked
Weekend? I saw in the theater. Yeah, I thought it was great. I saw it in the theater at a lot of these films like Antonio or something, they don't hold up on like their home TV, right?
Yeah.
One of the things I like to tell my students is, guys, I know this is hard. It's hard for me. Put down your phones.
Yeah.
Okay. Put down your iPads and just breathe and just be with the film. That's why I like to screen the films when possible together,
When we watched The Deer Hunter as one of the last films in my 70s film class, people would leave the theater because they wanted to check their phones. So
right. And the timing,
kind of
the pacing of some of those films is pretty shaggy, 70s.
Oh yeah, Antonioni people find boring, which is such a shame because his work is incredible.
Right. Well, with today's fast cutting, and I get it, But ironically, when you look at, that's what maybe one of the reasons I like noir is pretty snappy,
Yes, noir is such an underrated genre. I love noir, and being probably one of the first noirs, that's a great place to start for introducing students to the genre.
Well, it's interesting that you say M is a noir. I never thought about it because I don't know why I didn't think about it. I guess it is. Yeah, it could be. That would be a fun thing to talk about in class.
Yeah, I always learned that it was one of the first, if not the first, noir. So that's always been my frame of reference, but maybe it isn't. Maybe I got to check my research. I don't know.
Well, I mean, there's, one of the things about film noir is that name and that category came about after the films were made. It was like retrospectively. So, it was kind of a category that came about later. So what fits in there? It's more of a mood, right? And it
Yes.
certainly is about, maybe it is. It definitely has a like downbeat ending and, your uncertain morality and, all kinds of things. And when I can, Elizabeth, I try to draw upon the history of film to structure the documentaries to make them more playable and less boring.
That's fascinating. Which films have you kind of looked at as inspiration for structure for your films?
Well, I mean, just classic movie structure, I think still works, just as long as you're not too obvious about it. Like, ideally, the story is good enough that people don't see the stitching, unless you want them to see the stitching in a more postmodern kind of way. But, I don't know, Wizard of Oz, maybe,
Classic. Yeah.
Because it clearly shows you all the different stages that a hero's journey can go through, Joseph Campbell and stuff. So I look to that and, I'll try to force it, but if it can fit in that structure, it helps. You use the phrase feature film versus documentary, but feature actually refers to length. So you have feature documentaries and feature fiction films, right? Compared to short feature. Short stuff comes out of the old movie theater circuit. So there, the border between fiction and nonfiction is a lot more porous than people think. For example, when like someone like Jack Nicholson is playing a role, he's kind of being himself, or what seems to be whatever he is in there, So there's almost a documentary aspect to fiction as well.
That's so funny you mentioned Nicholson. I was just having that conversation about him and his work. Someone said that his performance in Cuckoo's Nest was overacted, overrated because he's doing too much, basically. But some say it's his best performance.
God, I haven't seen that in so long, but it was very affecting when I saw it,
Yeah.
Probably, yeah.
As I said, you've been working in the industry for many years now, and one of your early jobs was as a production assistant on the 1992 documentary Cousin Bobby, which was directed by Jonathan Demme. What did you learn from Demme or on the set that stuck with you when you started making films of your own?
It was about Jonathan Demme's cousin, who was like a progressive a minister or a priest in uptown New York. So it was really just a couple of days, but I mean, what do you learn? You learn how much energy it takes to make movies, and just keeping a good attitude going and just being there and giving what you can, But I loved his film, Something Wild. That was incredible.
I hear such great things about it, but I have only seen The Silence of the Lambs, which of course is very famous and popular for everyone, especially means a lot for the horror genre, those who love horror.
Definitely couldn't have been made without M.
That's a fascinating connection. Yes.
The manhunt genre,
Oh yes, yeah, the manhunt genre. For your film Calling All Earthlings, you said you had about 50 to 60 hours of footage for that film. So, documentary making a film is kind of a miracle anyway, as many say, but documentary is especially hard because how do you cut a documentary to about 75 minutes from 50 to 60 hours? So how do you go about the post-production in your film and tailoring your story down to a shorter length?
It's something I have to be reminded of because I'm making a new film now. Is that it? We only had 50 or 60 hours? Oh, okay.
Only?
That's what I said. Well, yeah, usually for documentary, it's like 100 or 200 to 1,
Oh my God. Okay.
Yeah, so the first thing you do is definitely turn off the phone, get out, for me, a yellow Lego pad,
Mm-hmm.
and then you watch the footage and take notes. And I personally break it into 4 categories, super great for whatever reason. It could be just spidey sense,
Mm-hmm.
Or something happens in it or whatever. And I mark those as the super selects. And then a second category, which is pretty good. And then those are the next level. And then the other 2 are, And then the 4th level is like no good, like it was out of focus or whatever. It was just so bad that you never want to use it. So then I watch those and throw them on a timeline and see what happens. You know what I mean? So you start making connections. It depends. on how much story there is there, you know. With Commune, there was definitely a story, you know, right?
Yeah, definitely.
As Godard said, right? You had all those epigrams, quippy remarks. You know, there's films need a beginning, middle, and end, but not necessarily in that order. So I looked to see if there's a beginning, middle, and end. And for Commune, there certainly was, you know. It's just, you know, historical. So you knew that they all went up to find utopia, and that you knew they hit all these challenges, which is great because, for cinematically speaking, because, you know, without conflict, you have nothing. And you knew there was a darkest hour with the cult that comes along. And then you want to come to some kind of ending. Yeah. People move on and take the lessons they learned from Black Bear and go back to the city and into the world.
In an interview, you said you used Commune as a way of talking about the 60s in Northern California and used Calling All Earthlings to talk about the 50s in Southern California. Do you intentionally want to make documentaries focused on California stories?
Wow, you really do your research. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's really amazing. Well, I've always, you know, I said when I was 13 and stuff, it was formative years, right? I was traveling around California. I had already listened to all those records from the bands that were primarily West Coast bands, like the Dead and the whole San Francisco Jefferson Airplane and Love and all these bands. And so that was in my head. And then I just found it so magical when I went out there with my family. The light, you know, and the air, incredible. Santa Barbara and, you know, all of it. And so I always found it really magical to be in California. So it just happened that I found these interesting places. In fact, Commune, ironically, was mostly conceived of and worked on in New York City.
Ah, wow. Different setting to make that film.
Yeah, we shot, of course, in Northern California and at the Black Bear Ranch, but mostly, you know, cut in New York and thought about in New York. So, you know, for Commune, it's beyond just California in the 60s. I think it's really a kind of catalog, if you will, of all the movements and ideas of that era of the counterculture. You know, remembering that these people who started Black Bear were coming out of the 50s, you know?
Yeah.
And all that kind of conformity and fear of Russia and all that stuff, and fear of the Soviet Union. So they were trying experiments across the board. So it was amazing. You know, what you don't want to do, in my opinion, is start with an idea. When people come to me and they're like, I want to do a film about ecology or something, I'm like, find a story, you know.
That's a great point. Some people say that films don't need a story, but some people argue that the story is everything. So it's a very interesting debate, but I agree. I definitely understand. It's very important to pinpoint what the story is for a film.
Well, yeah, and, you know, they don't need a story. I mean, it's a medium, and so you can do abstract art and film. And I went to Bard College for an MFA program. There's so many great filmmakers who are just more like painting with film.
Yeah.
You know, so you don't need a story, no. But, you know, for the kind of films that you want to get a wider audience, that's helpful.
Now, I do have some questions for Calling All Earthlings, but I'll limit them because I have plenty of Commune questions for you.
Okay, whatever you want.
Okay. Which one should I pick? Let's see. So, since you said that you're both a seeker and non-believer, did your opinion on George Van Tassel and what he saw believed changed from when you first started making the film to when you completed it?
You're talking about Calling All Earthlings, which is just to people haven't seen it, about George Van Tassel, who was a very early UFO believer, and he claimed he had contact out in Joshua Tree, California, and they told him to build this dome called the Integratron, which has become remarkably popular as kind of this place to go. So the George Van Tassel thing is very, I don't necessarily believe his story.
Okay.
But, you know, there is this architectural historian who is actually going to be at the screening in Ojai. We're screening both films for free in Ojai, California.
Oh, yes.
I think you have the date there in September. I think it's the 18th, 19th. Anyway, he did the application to make the Integratron, the domed building, a landmark. And in that, he starts talking about some of the concepts, and they're pretty wild,
Yeah.
There's more to it than meets the eye. So that's what I like, that it's not so determined, There's not like we found that this guy's a fraud. I think he was, certainly interested in getting the hell out of the rat race of L.A.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. People, another great film is that Joan of Arc film.
Passion of Joan of Arc?
Yes.
Great film, yeah.
Yeah. So, some people have a different way of looking at the world, including Joan of Arc, right? And some people, I'm not talking about the Luc Besson one, I'm talking about the original one.
Yeah.
So when you kind of see that they have a whole nother way of looking at the world, and, some people might say they're crazy, people say they're inspired,
Yeah, and your film definitely...
Or they've been touched by God, Or some people might say just touched.
Yes, yeah, it seems like Joshua Tree, as it's said in your film, that people are either very impacted by it or it doesn't really do much for them. It's very interesting. I didn't know much about the Joshua Tree area before watching Calling All Earthlings.
Yeah, we were lucky to catch the area right before it became too LA-ified, like everything.
Oh, interesting.
Right. Yeah, everything's all Instagrammed and,
Of course.
I don't know, bound. Everything's too easy to find in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah, Van Tassel had a big effect there. I mean, there was really nothing there when he went out to Landers. And when we filmed, it was still pretty mellow. And, I'm going to see a friend tonight who still lives there part-time. So.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, people march to the beat of a different drummer. I will say that I found that I really liked the people I met out there.
They seem like nice people.
Yeah, and a lot of people with a lot of wild ideas that I don't necessarily agree with. Like Clive, who did the soundtrack, is he wouldn't think I'm speaking out of school. He's an anti-vaxxer.
Ah, okay. Yeah.
On the edge of Q, really, a little bit. So, you don't have, that's one of the things that we need to look at as a society, in my opinion, humble opinion, hopefully humble, that you don't have to agree with someone to hang out with them and like them,
Absolutely. That's a message
so
that
the
I
whole
think...
MAGA thing, the whole divide and conquer thing of the politics right now in this country is a shame.
Yes, it really is. Your film, Commune, is celebrating its 20th anniversary through several screenings around the U.S. in its restored version. Congratulations on this celebration tour of your film. What is your film, Commune, about?
What is Commune about? Commune is about a group of people on the heels of the 50s who decide to go to the woods. I don't think they said this. I think I said it, and find utopia, or find their new world, transformed world, and get out of the city. Again, very similar to Van Tassel, right? But
yes.
The only problem is, your utopia might be, playing the piano and practicing 4 hours a day, because in our new world, we're going to need art. And then someone else's, if you're living together as a group, might be gardening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But they're like, wait a minute, why do you get to play the piano for 4 hours a day while I have to tend to the crops? And someone else's passion or whatever could be some completely different. So everyone had their own separate idea of what this new world would be. And also you drag along your old, neuroses. And so you go to, the only problem with utopia is that it doesn't exist. And you're dragging along your own luggage, giant suitcase full of your bullshit. Can I curse?
Yeah, you can. You can curse if you want. Some do, some don't.
Yeah. So you're lugging this suitcase full of stuff from your psyche. So that was fertile ground for filmmaking for me,
Yes. Now, you said they were in search for something. A part of what really interested me in watching Commune was the fact that I'm such a big fan of Easy Rider. And I was reminded several times throughout the film of Easy Rider. And the tagline for that film is, they're looking for America and they couldn't find it. Something along those lines.
Right. That's right. Ooh,
and,
I like it.
And in the beginning of the film, one of the first similarities I noticed was you started off with, well, one of the first shots was this aerial shot of a river, which resembles the shot that closes Easy Rider.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. During the Ballad of Easy Rider, right when they're pulling out from the, sorry, spoilers, after they're killed, the camera pulls out aerial, and then the song plays. So one man you talked with in Berkeley, Cannoli, was a teenage Republican who had an identity crisis shortly before graduating high school, but found himself undergoing a major change by living at Black Bear Ranch. He reminded me of George Hansen, Jack Nicholson's character in Easy Rider, who is seen as America's son. Do you think, had George not been killed off so early, that he would have become like Cannoli?
In what way?
They were both very much ingrained in the town, and they were, like, you could tell with George that he didn't quite fit in with this town. Yes, he looked the part. He looked like the lawyer that everyone can go to and regular town man, but he had a drinking problem. He felt a little like an outsider in some ways, but that wasn't fully explored because he was killed off early, and he actually got along with Peter Fonda and Dennis Hopper's characters more than the hitchhiker, I'd say. So I thought that was a very interesting part of the film, but learning about Cannoli, I thought, that kind of reminds me of potentially George Hansen's path had he not been killed off so early.
Well, I think that Cannoli, it's a great, we lucked out in a lot of ways with the people at the participants in the film from Black Bear Ranch because they were smart people. But for Cannoli, it's a great, what do they call that? Icon or, indexical, one of those, in terms of symbolism of the shift,
Yes.
From straight-laced American. By the way, did you say spoiler alert about Easy Rider?
I mean, people sometimes.
I don't think you could say spoiler alert for a film that's 50 years old. I'm sorry.
I know, but some people, I keep trying to get my friends to watch Easy Rider. I don't, and I always tell them, go in knowing nothing. I don't want it spoiled for you. So to my friends who are listening, I want them to preserve the ending.
That's nice of you.
Thank you.
I don't think you ruined anything. Anyway, Cannoli was just this great symbol of that shift from, the 50s into the 60s. And I'll give it a little spoiler alert. He says, my name was Ken and my girlfriend's name was Barbie. He sees a picture of them looking very 1950s or early 60s or something. And then in my senior year in high school, something happened, and then we cut to a photo of him looking really stoned and hippie-ish. So I think that's just more emblematic of what happened for a lot of people.
People like those who live in communes were free individuals to the fullest extent. I couldn't help but be reminded of George's famous discussion of freedom and people being scared by what they represent. He said, talking about it and being it, that's two different things. Of course, don't ever tell anybody that they're not free, because then they're going to get real busy killing and maiming to prove to you that they are. They're going to talk to you and talk to you and talk to you about individual freedom, but when they see a free individual, it's going to scare them. It makes them dangerous. I was wondering if you could talk about the fear and judgment people had towards those living at Black Bear Ranch and in communes in general throughout the 60s and 70s.
Yeah, well, this is the history of the world. Anytime someone's different, people can get scared, fear. So I think at Black Bear, there's not a ton of people up there, right? It's pretty damn remote. Yeah. These politicians, whatever, who say there's not enough room in America, they're out of their minds. Maybe not enough water at this point, clean water. But when somebody comes along who looks different and partially doing that on purpose, right, to differentiate themselves out from the body populace, that can be scary. At Black Bear, I think people just kind of got over that and got to know each other. It's also in the rural community a matter of survival. Yeah. So if the nearest neighbor is 8 miles away, this happens when I was up there driving down the road, you stop your truck, they stop their truck, you hang out, maybe even have a beer because there's no police or anything. Hopefully not more than one. And then you talk and you communicate. You say, what's going on? I heard rain's coming. The peaches are coming in over, 20 miles from here over at Mel's farm. So I think people got over it. but they were city people, most of the Black Bear people, and had to learn the ways of the country or die.
Yeah.
Right? Good conflict.
Yeah.
Right, on a physical level.
Yes, that's literally the ending of Easy Rider, actually. So that's so fitting.
Well, now we have a spoiler alert. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, now I can spoil it. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So something I always wondered about communes and was hoping would be answered through watching your film is what caused the dissolution of a commune. I was intrigued to learn that the collectivism that led people to communes is what largely contributed to the beginning of their downfall, as people became compelled to live a life surrounding their individualistic desires. What do you think that stark switch says about human beings? Do individualistic needs overpower one's collectivistic values?
Wow, there's a lot packed in to that question.
Oh, sorry, I can take it one question at a time. I can start with just one.
Yeah, could you? Yeah.
Yeah,
it's fascinating.
What do you think that stark switch says about human beings?
That everyone kind of leaves and does their own individualistic trip. Well, I think, and my wife would disagree with me, that communism is a nice idea, but it's not really, full on, like from each according to their ability to each according to their need. Beautiful idea, but in reality, it doesn't quite work that way. What it wound up being in the Soviet Union, which, wasn't really communism, was like, well, they pretend to pay us, we pretend to work. So there is something motivating about money, which just represents energy. And I think a mixed economy is good. But it's an interesting question, because also the kibbutz movement in Israel went south, over years. So I'm not sure what happened. You saw like the people who were super hippie becoming like Jerry Rubin, and Avi Hoffman. They were East Coast, the Yippies, I think they were. And they were, at one point in like the late 70s, all of a sudden Jerry Rubin was having networking parties. They're like, wow, it's the 80s are coming, and Reagan and, all that, There's always been this epic battle between the Darwinian forces of survival and, striking your own versus a more of a cooperative feeling and place. So I don't know if it's the infrastructure of internet and phones and all that. That could be part of it.
Mm-hmm.
But every communal group is different. It's like saying growing up in a house, like growing up in a nuclear family. So 80% of people, in my personal opinion, I think Paredes law, I think it's Paredes, 80% versus 20%. Like 80% of people just want leaders. They don't want the challenge of leadership. Mm. So it can turn into a cult situation. And many, many times these group situations do, but not always. So there are a lot of groups and people still living together, and they call it intentional communities, differentiating themselves out, or there's IC.org, and it's differentiating themselves out from the commune people, which, was seen more as like hippie and all that. So it's still going on. People are still living together, and you have things like, I don't know, being from Long Island, New York, like my parents' generation, they weren't communal, but they were neighborhoody, right? So the whole neighborhood moved to Florida together. I'm sure you've seen that in South Florida. It's like they moved to Tamarack, 4,000 people. And like they took the same community and now they were doing it in a warmer place. So community is super important. And sharing is nice, when you get away from the fear of people, when you're in your first level survival root chakra. I was talking to someone about chakras yesterday. The root, if you're in that mode of like, how do I survive? That's tough. That's just a tough place to be in general. And unfortunately, the corporatization of real estate, I think, is making people live together more and more, making people look at that possibility. But I also think that what's happening in this country is making people look at getting out.
Yeah.
In whatever way they can, be it moving to the country and living together. And that's beyond left or right, right? And it's like, there's certainly a lot of ultra-right people living in the woods together. So just, getting out of mainstream society, a lot of people are moving out of the United States because it seems to be moving towards a very authoritarian situation, which ain't good.
No, and actually, if you're talking about how communes are still around today, intentional communities, I looked it up. There's about 300 and counting for communes in the U.S. or intentional communities. So that was really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. And, if you start including in religious communities, it gets much bigger. But, one of the great things about the Black Bear Ranch, it was a group of leaders, I think, and Richard and Elsa, who were just traveling through the area, and Elsa was like, "Stop the car. What's this?
Mm-hmm.
Look at this land." They were great leaders because they did it very gently, but also it was anarchy. It was free land for free people. So there was no anarchy in a good way, in my opinion, because it was no, like, it has to be this way. You have to wake up and be silent for 10 minutes. It wasn't spiritual. I think spirituality can often, the Buddha himself says it's one of the big traps is feeling like you're super spiritual. So Buddha says it,
Yeah.
Right? Because I've meditated for 7 days and now I'm holier than you.
Yeah.
So the religious and spiritual stuff could cause a problem. Now, there have been a lot of successful communal type groups like the Amish, right? And the Hutterites and all that. And it goes on. But there's a lot of successful communes still from the 60s, or at least some, like the Farm in Tennessee. How they keep that going is a good question. At the screenings we're doing in the Bay Area, we're going to have a lot of people from Black Bear. So
cool.
If you are anywhere near the Bay Area on September, 11, 12, 13, that would be 12, 13, 14 in Berkeley and in Sebastopol and Mill Valley, I think, and San Rafael. We'll have some people there, and who knows, maybe even Peter Coyote will show up.
That would be cool. Yes, that would be very cool. And as
they're not, you remember people, here's the thing about when you make documentaries, you remember them from when you shot them. So sometimes I'll meet people and I'll feel like I'm very intimate with them who I've shot with in the past. And they're like, "Who are you again?" Because for them, it was only an hour or two.
Yeah.
But for me, I've poured over that footage with my editors and myself for, maybe a year or two. But the other side of that is you remember them as you see them. So I was talking to Harriet, who's in the film. She was one of the early Black Bear people. She's like, "Well, I'm old now." I'm like, "Oh, you're really old." Hard to believe. It sounds exactly the same. I think that's one of the great things we have in the film is that we were able to find old video footage, like the first video footage. Somebody was traveling around with the first portable video camera called the Portapack. It's a fascinating history. And they had this rotting footage in a basement up in Oregon. And we were able to get to that and get it from them. And, so you see the people out in the commune in their 20s. And then when we interview them, they're probably in their 50s or 40s. Yeah. So that's really important.
Yeah. And this whole 20th anniversary tour, this is an incredible way to celebrate the film's anniversary. And for it to be restored, has the audience's reaction changed from its release in 2005 to today?
Well, I think in 2005 it was almost a curio. Nobody had really done anything on living together. It was in the air. There was a Danish film, I think, called Together, but it came out right after. But it was definitely in the air. But at that point, it was just like, okay, yeah, look at that. So, one of my goals, I guess, is to challenge and re-examine history, because history is about the reception of it at this time and re-sifting through the materials. So the idea that, that whole 60s thing didn't really work. Well, it worked on many, many levels. It just became so mainstream. And capitalism does tend to neutralize dissent, Again, I'm sort of a fan of capitalism, but not unfettered. But so when back then you had your co-op, and hopefully you still have like a natural food co-op in your area, or a CSA from your farmers, all of a sudden now it's like Whole Foods and it's billions of dollars. And, Echinacea, Michael Tierra, who's in the film, who tried out all his herbs on people at the Black Bear Ranch, he, now Echinacea is a, huge business. So it gets swallowed up, and the charge, the kind of bad, not bad boy, but, potent political or whatever charge if it gets diminished because it's at your corner store.
Thank you so much for joining me today, Jonathan. I had really been looking forward to chatting with you today and very much enjoyed discussing your film Commune. Your work brought me back to watching documentaries, which I'm very appreciative of. You make documentaries surrounding intriguing subjects that encourage others to learn more about worlds and people different from our own and capture them with an open mind, free of judgment. So I'm very excited to see what you do next.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Yeah, the new film is the third and final chapter in the California trilogy, and it's about Chinatown in Los Angeles, right? Okay, talk
cool.
about archetypical potentials there, and the working class people there who are fighting a billionaire who has an idea that might really change the fabric of the community.
Interesting. Do you already have a projected release date, or are you still in pre-production for that?
We've shot a lot of material. It just needs editing and more. It just needs editing and more shooting and money. That's all.
Okay.
But
I'm very excited to watch
it will be made, and it's called Gondola, and that's part 3. It's much more political than anything I've done.
Okay. Now, Commune will have a few more screenings throughout California. Let's see. I'll look at the list now. This episode is August 27th. So the next showing is on September 12th at the San Rafael Film Center at 7 p.m. in California. The next being on September 13th at the Rialto Cinemas Sebastopol at 7 p.m. in California as well. And then on the 14th at Berkeley, the Elmwood at 1 p.m. And then another in Los Angeles on September 18th at the Philosophical Research Center in LA. And then the last known showing is September 20th at the OJ Playhouse. And
Ojai, another fascinating place. Yeah, another fascinating counterculture place.
And that's where the double feature of Commune and Calling All Earthlings will be screened, right?
That's right. And the architectural historian of the Integratron will be there to talk about Calling All Earthlings with me.
Oh, cool. Everyone, that's definitely one you should all go to. But if you're in the areas for any of those places, you should all definitely go see them. And I'll put the information on my Instagram, the All the Film Things Instagram, and spread the word about that closer to the screening dates. And if you're not in California, I believe more screenings will be announced based on the poster, so stay updated by following @Commune the Movie on Instagram and Facebook. Is there a film recommendation?
We have Hudson, New York coming up on August 16th, which is upstate New York. A lot of people are there for the summer. And Long Beach starts in a few days, Long Beach, California. What were you saying? A film to recommend?
Oh, yes. I always conclude an episode with, is there a film recommendation, a line from a film, really anything you would like to conclude our episode with today?
I'm going to return to Duck Soup.
Yeah, Duck Soup.
Everyone see Duck Soup. Yeah, Marx Brothers, Duck Soup. All the way.
All right, I'm going to have to watch that one. I'll recommend Commune and Easy Rider. It could be a good double feature. And thank you again for joining me today, Jonathan. And thank you all for listening. Thank you so much. And Jonathan, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful episode. Bye, everyone. Special thanks to Jonathan Berman, Kelly Hargraves, Dr. Jillian Smith, and Caitlin Miranda. This episode was recorded on August 7th, 2025.